and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, my co-host Justin Baker, joining me today for our special top 10 as summer is definitely, we are in full swing. It's time we get back to our top 10s. We just did a top 10 breakout players for 2023, so you can check that one out. Subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. But today we're kind of going a little bit of a throwback. I think at least my list is a little bit more of a throwback. We are doing the top 10 enforcers, top 10 tough guys, however you want to say it, of all time. But before we do that, let's welcome none other than Justin Baker to the show.
Hi, everybody.
All right, sometimes I just go and I'm like, shit, I gotta let him talk. Like, what the hell is your problem, you dick? People
they know I'm here.
Yeah, people like you better than me, anyways. We all know that. So that's okay. I've come to grips with it. It's one of those things. All right, so top 10 enforcers. Before we actually go through our list, when I suggested this, you shot me down immediately and said we just did the top 10 grinders a year ago. Last summer, I think, at some point we did the top 10 grinders. It was pretty close to. I have a compilation of all my top 10 lists, and I think it really was like last year's final top 10 list. We did the top 10 grinders. So you weren't wrong, but I said, damn it, it was my pick, so I'm sticking with it. So we stuck with the fighters. Did you have anybody on the grinders list that you have on the fighters list?
Let me take a peek here. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. How many?
Just one.
Just one. Okay. I have a feeling I know who it is, but we'll
find out.
We'll get there when we get there. I only have one as well. I feel like they're probably the same people. I've got a lot of guys from the 80s and 90s, especially those mid. Yeah. I mean, how can you not? That's when some of the greats were, but definitely 80s and 90s heavy. I tried my darndest to find somebody who is worthy of being on this list that's currently actively playing right now. I tried really, really hard. I did it. I put one guy on the list.
Did you?
I did, because I feel like there's still a little bit of that in today's game. There's at least the 2010s. There's got it's like, well, who's the guy who could be on this list? So I put him at number 10. Sorry, because I just felt like there needed to be somebody that has played recently, because other than him, I think probably the last player to play, my guess would be mid 2000s. It would be one of these guys, maybe, and then the rest of them are all really early 2000s and earlier, when they would have retired. So I felt like I needed to do somebody in the last 20 years that played. But it was hard. Not gonna lie, it was really hard. I tried every possible excuse to get somebody on this list that plays now, and I really did struggle. But
yeah, I did not. So
okay,
no struggle there. And I mean, let's be honest here. It's kind of hard, right? The NHL. I mean, again, fighting's not outlawed, but the game has changed, right? So it's not as big a part of the game anymore as it once was.
Yep, absolutely, and that's fair. It's not as if I'm going to compare this player that I put at number 10 to the players that I have probably in the top 5, but I do think his toughness is worth noting, and the fact that he's really the one guy that I felt, all right, I can put him on here and feel decent about it. I just felt like I needed to have somebody who was currently playing. So that's my little caveat. Anything else that what helped you to determine where guys fell on your list?
Well, I mean, I tried to do my research, right? Because when fighting was prevalent in the really the 70s and 80s and early 90s, right? I didn't grow up watching most of these guys, so I had to do a little bit of research, a little backstory, right? Why were these guys? I checked other lists. I went in and looked at why these guys were considered the best fighters. of their era or their time, whatever you want to call it, and really dug into that penalty minutes. Did you lead the NHL in penalty minutes, right? That was a big factor in it too for me. And then just reputation was another big thing too, right? If you had, there's somebody on my list, I won't tell you where he's at, but he had the nickname The Hammer. There's a big reason for that, right? So obviously you don't get a nickname like that without, being a decent fighter, I would hope.
I feel like the players don't get good nicknames anymore.
They don't.
They get nicknames like Pickles.
The bread man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just not those, like, you hear those nicknames and you're like, oh, that's kind of fun, but they're not the, like, some of these guys had some pretty great nicknames, and I mean, you knew who some of these guys were. I think every single one of these guys had some kind of nickname. A lot of them did. I know, like, he's not on my list, but Derek Bugard, the Boogeyman. I mean, just such a good nickname. Nobody wanted to go near that guy.
Yes.
But yeah. I didn't really factor necessarily leading the league in penalty minutes, although I guess I did a little bit, but more so what your reputation was. I tried to balance it a little bit with, like, maybe a couple guys got on this list because they also were really important to their team. Like, I wanted to find players who it wasn't like I'm going to be honest, like Stu Grimson, a great fighter. He didn't really have a huge impact on his team. Like, he was a fighter. That was it. Didn't score goals. He was not, like, I remember this one year when Stu Grimson played for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks at the time. He fell forward and the puck went in off of his helmet. And it was the first goal that he had scored in like 3 years. And they interviewed him after the game, and he was like, yeah, well, I just recently changed my stick, and I really feel good about it. Like, he knew he wasn't there to score goals, right? And that just, he was just there to fight. And there was sort of a time where it eventually became like every team just needs one of these bums who, I mean, it's in some respects unfortunate that it was like, hey, we just need like a boxer who's going to go out and just beat the shit out of someone else who also is the same way. And it personally, I liked it a little bit, but like I prefer to have the guy who can fight but also can do something for the team. Not just like, hey, my career high was 9 points and I had 50 times more penalty minutes in a season, kind of thing. Like, that's so that factored in a little bit.
Nope, I absolutely agree with you. And I've got a couple guys on this list where if you go back and look at it, they actually have over 1,000 points.
Okay.
So that did factor into it for sure.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Well, who just missed your list? Do you have any of those?
I have one. Okay. And that is Mr. Hockey himself, Gordie Howe.
Okay. He misses the list. All right. So you have somebody else, because I imagine he was on your top 10 grinders list.
He wasn't even on the grinders list.
He wasn't?
No.
Oh, wow. He's my number 2 on the grinders list. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll find out who that other player is who is on your grinder. I don't have your grinders list in front of me, so I would know. I have 2 players on my just missed. I have Marty McSorley and Joey Kocur.
Ooh, okay.
Joey Kocur, because he was just an absolute monster of a person. It actually is amazing how many of these guys played for the Red Wings. Like, there were a few of them. Out of these guys, you're looking like they had Kocur at one point. They had Stu Grimson. They have a guy a little later on my list who I'm sure you know who it is. Like they had some great fighters here in Detroit. But those guys are just missed my list. Marty McSorley, I had him in there, and after he kind of missed because I put my number 10 in there instead, which is my current player. So I would say that Marty McSorley would probably be able to beat up at least half of my list, and he also he took a beating from at least one guy on my list too, which we'll address here. But Yeah. Well, actually, no. He was the one who did it. Marty McSorley's the one who did the crazy slash in the face. Yeah. To somebody who appears later on my list. So I'm not going to say his name. I want to wait.
Okay. I love it.
All right. Let's hear your number 10.
Number 10, a guy who hit your just missed, and that's Joey Kocur.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, the other half of the Bruise brothers, 217 fights, and so let me.
I have 269 fights.
Yeah,
for Kocur.
I actually checked a few different lists, and it was I've got 269 on one. I found 217 on another. So I'm not really sure how the.
Okay, so here's the list that I worked off of, which uses the NHL Fight Card database.
Okay.
It includes preseason, regular season, and playoff fights, plus a double minor for roughing, and other fights that didn't receive a 5-minute major but were definitely fights.
Okay, I have that list as well.
Okay, so you've got I think it's on HF boards.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so
that's the list I worked off of, because I did like that there was a little bit of there was a combo of the preseason. I was like, how the frick did you guys get preseason fights in here? But hey.
Yeah, I like that.
Good for you.
Right. That takes some research. I mean, let's be honest. And I mean, okay, so at 269 fights, he comes in 11th all-time in fighting. I grew up watching this guy, and so it was just kind of hard for me not to put him on my list, having – just having the nostalgia factor there a little bit too. And there's a couple other guys on my list from the Detroit Red Wings as well. Again, you can kind of tell where I'm going with this and what I grew up watching, and that that definitely plays a factor. And let's face it, right? You finish 11th all time in fighting. You're pretty damn good fighter.
He was a scary mother effer, man. He was.
Yeah.
Yep. Can't. He just missed my list, and the guy that he just missed for. I know it might. It sounds silly when I say his name. You're gonna go. I feel like you're gonna laugh. You're gonna laugh when I say Matt Martin of the New York Islanders.
Matt Martin.
But Matt Martin has the most fights of any active player in the NHL. So by this list, it says that in 2018-19, he had 101 fights. Plus 7 more that were. So he had 108. I've seen other lists that have him around the same but current, which he's been in more fights. So I don't know. The number is somewhere probably above 110 at this point. I don't know, because based on the rest of the list, Lucic has been in around 90 something fights. Tom Wilson's been around 90 fights. I just felt like, Matt Martin, he's been a really important player on a lot of teams. He's respected, and he will fight. I mean, he doesn't need to fight at this point in his career. He's not fighting, but I thought, hey, he's had the most fights over the course of the last 10, 12 years, so I'm going to give it to him and put him at number 10.
Okay. I respect it.
All right. Let's go number 9.
All right, number 9 for me is Donald Brashear.
Okay, there he is.
Good old Flyer player. There he is.
And it was when he played for Vancouver that he got slashed in the head, right? Because McSorley played for Boston.
That's right.
And Brashear got slashed in the head. I actually watched that game live. I have no idea why. I loved the Vancouver Canucks when I was younger, and we had the NHL package, and I remember watching it and being like, oh my goodness. I think he got 25 game suspension for that.
Oh, that's too good.
I like it. I'll look up to see how many games he got suspended, but I'm sure it won't be too hard to find. That was the worst thing he ever did. Or sorry, it was not Brashear getting suspended. It was McSorley getting suspended. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will say another. I thought about putting him at number 10 because when I look at him and Joey Kocur, right? To me, Joey Kocur was a more intimidating fighter on the ice, but I gave Brashear a little bit of nod because I did a little research and found out Brashear actually trains and does have a record of 1-0 as a professional MMA fighter.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yes. So the guy can throw fisticuffs.
That's awesome. By the way, it was February 21st, 2000. It was the Canucks against the Bruins. And Brashear was in a fight with McSorley. Brashear destroyed him. And later in the game, Brashear collided with then Bruins goalie Byron Defoe, who was taken off on a stretcher with a knee injury. So then McSorley wanted to get into another fight with Brashear, but he refused. So with 4.6 seconds left in the game, McSorley, of course, swung his stick at Brashear's head from behind. So he was from behind him, two-handed slash right to the right temple. So Brashear collapses. His helmet falls off the back of his head as he strikes the ice. So he suffers a seizure and a grade 3 concussion. And
wow.
Yeah. Then the Canucks goalie at the time was Garth Snow. So he tries to fight McSorley, but a pileup occurs and Snow couldn't get to McSorley and was ejected with 2.8 seconds left in the game. And then McSorley was indefinitely suspended and was charged with assault with a weapon in British Columbia. And he got 18 months of probation. And he was no longer allowed to play in a game against Brashear.
Wow. I didn't know that part. That's crazy.
Yeah, so Brashear, I guess he missed the 23 games afterwards and had his suspension officially set at 1 year following the conviction. And he never played in another NHL game. So, and apparently he and McSorley had no relationship prior to the incident, and he has no plans to ever speak to him again anyways. So I guess there you go. There's your answer. They're not going to talk about it anymore either. All right. Who do you have at number 8?
Well, yeah, but did we get your number 9 yet? I don't think we did.
Oh, perhaps we did not. Well, I will tell you in just a moment. I accidentally kicked the plug on my monitor, so it went out. That's great. All right, my number 9 is Dale Hunter.
Okay.
An absolute monster of a man. I think he's 22nd all time according to my list for fights with 235. Out of anyone in the top 25 for fights, he has the most points all time. So had to tip my hat to Dale Hunter. I mean, he was just an absolute madman of a player, but also a fantastic. 1,020 points, 323 goals, played over 1,400 games, and only had 3,500 penalty minutes too.
Only
had like a ton of seasons where he was over 200 penalty minutes in a year, and just fantastic. I mean, there were playoff years where he had 1 year he played in 14 games, had 98 penalty minutes. Another year, 17, he had 97 penalty minutes. The guy almost had 100 penalty minutes in 2 different playoff years. Unbelievable. And
wow.
Total in the playoffs, he had 727 penalty minutes in 186 games.
That's insane.
That's just ridiculous. In his last year in the NHL, he was on Colorado for his final season, and he had 38 penalty minutes in the games that he was playing in 19 games that year. So even as a grizzled old veteran, what was that? 1999, he was 39 years old, 39 years old, and he's still getting 38 penalty minutes in the playoffs. So good for him. Good for him. But I feel like as far as probably one of the more talented guys on my list, I guess kind of I have the really great fighters towards the top of my list, but the bottom part of my list is a lot of players who had a lot of talent but also fought a lot. So that starts off the run of talented players who fought with Dale Hunter. So who do you have at number 8?
Yeah, at number 8, I've got Rob Ray.
Rob Ray.
Rob Ray. Yeah, that's the drink. Yeah, so this guy clocks in, coming in at number 6 with 294 fights all time. But the reason why he gets a nod and a spot on my list is because basically he is the reason why guys would strip down during fights, because he invented the technique of he would just grab a hold of you and you couldn't go anywhere. And so
he would just have, and he could also just throw him so fast.
Yes.
Yep, just threw him fast, and his entire elbow pad would just come off, and he just went to town.
Yeah,
he would be naked by the time he got off the ice.
For real. And not to mention too, I did a little looking, and he actually did. He's got 13 fights against Ty Domi alone. So that's a scary man to go up against. So if you're willing to fight him 13 times, you better be able to throw fist. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Rob Ray was on the 99 Sabres, if I'm not mistaken, when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. Do you believe I am mistaken?
I actually have no idea. But I will say, so
yes, he was on the Sabres that year. Funny enough, though, he only played 5 games in the playoffs.
Oh, not bad.
In 55 games in the playoffs, he had a total of 5 points and 169 penalty minutes.
Love it. I will say all-time favorite Rob Ray moment, though. I'm not sure if you remember this or at least saw a video of it, but in 1992 against the Quebec Nordiques, they had a fan run on the ice and try to get into it with all 15 players on the Sabres benches.
Gosh.
And who's the guy he's standing right in front of? And that's Rob Ray. And
is this number one reference on Wikipedia is Rob Ray beats fan on YouTube?
Yes.
That must be it. That's perfect.
So good.
Amazing rookie season for Rob Ray. I mean, he played 27 games in his first season, but I think you would. How many games do you have to play to be considered a rookie? 40, right? I think it's 40.
Nowadays, I think it might be right.
I mean, we'll just go off of nowadays. I think it's 40 or 41 or something. But so he would have his second year in the league would have technically also been his rookie year. But he had 99 penalty minutes in 27 games. Then he just goes off 66 games. He gets 350 penalty minutes in a matter of 2 years. In only 129 games, he had 704 penalty minutes. That's 7 penalty. That's like 7 penalty minutes a game. I mean, he was fighting and getting a random penalty every game. In the playoffs, in 6 games, he had 56 penalty minutes in his rookie year. 56. Oh, that's wonderful. What a guy. Never scored more than 8 goals in an entire year, and it was in his rookie year that he scored 8 goals. Most points he ever had, also rookie season, 16. The rest of it, his next highest was 10. So,
my goodness.
Really,
you knew what you were there for.
Really good player. But scary and funny. Right. My number 8 is definitely slightly more talented, but equally as feared, but more so for the elbows. That's Gordie Howe. I feel like Gordie Howe deserves to be on this list. He is the best player on my list, obviously, but for his era where fighting wasn't as much of a thing, I think that he just deserves to be on this list. I mean, he was probably the most feared player on the ice most nights because he was insane. Like, he was just a total D-bag and a monster. Like, just you look at him now and you're like, okay, he was 6'4", and 6'4" now in the league. You're still a big guy, but you're definitely not the biggest. In 1950, you were an absolute monster, and he was. What he go and work on installing train tracks or something like that, or work for a concrete company in
construction?
The summer? Construction, yeah. So it just shows you. I mean, he was feared. And I think that has a lot to play into this list. And not only are you afraid of a guy because of what he can do with his fists or his elbows, but also what he can do with the puck. It's just an element that made him so great. And I think he absolutely should be on this list. Not comparing him to the fighting ability of guys higher on my list, but definitely, in terms of being feared, he was probably the most feared player in the NHL for a long time.
Yeah, he was definitely he threw elbows with the best of them. But I will say it is funny. We have the Gordie Howe hat trick, right? A goal assist in a fight. He had only 30 fights in his entire career, but did you know he only had 2 Gordie Howe hat tricks his entire career?
Hey, that's funny. It's funny how those little myths get started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go to your number 7.
Number 7 for me. We're going to stick with the Red Wings, but I've got Brendan Shanahan on my list.
I thought about putting Shanny on the list. I thought about it.
Yeah.
I didn't end up doing it, but I did. I considered it.
I mean, again, not one of the...
He was a good fighter.
Great fighter. Didn't throw fist all the time just because, again, he was expected to put up the points, right? You knew he could do that. But what I loved is I started looking into, his time with the Red Wings and, like, why they brought him in, right? And so,
he was at one point, I think, the best power forward in the NHL.
Yes,
especially after
exactly
Cam Neely retired. I think he was probably the guy. Other than maybe Lindros, I think you would probably, but Lindros didn't have the toughness of Shanahan.
Yeah, absolutely. But for me, I mean, it just basically boiled down to, Brendan Shanahan got in 128 fights, but again, there's that epic brawl, right, and between the Avs and Detroit, a couple of them actually, but really, it was his ability and willingness to throw down whenever. And he still went out there, and he put up some good points. So,
good deal. I like it. That's a good pick. I don't have him on my list, but I definitely considered him, and I actually, there are some particular clips from old Rock'em Sock'em Don Cherry videos, which I still have somewhere in my basement. I think they're on VHS, and some of those clips. Definitely, I have one in particular that's Brendan Shanahan, and he's doing his best Rob Ray impression. Like, he's losing all his clothes and stuff, just beating the snot out of someone. So, good Canadian boy, eh? That's
And for those who don't know, VHS is a videotape. Yeah, it's for some of our younger listeners.
Yeah, it's this thing you had to stick inside of a thing and play it video. It was like YouTube, but a lot bigger in your house.
It was like YouTube.
It was bigger in your house. My number 7 is one of the 70s guys. He was played basically his entire career through the 70s, a little bit into the 80s, but the bulk of his really high production was in the 70s for the Boston Bruins, and that is Terry O'Reilly, who was I think he's 25th all time in fights at 222 fights, but he was somebody who he protected maybe according to some, the greatest player of all time other than Wayne Gretzky in Bobby Orr. He definitely had a big factor in Boston's Stanley Cup wins, and I mean Terry O'Reilly, on top of being somebody who was willing to stand up for his teammates and fight a whole bunch, he also had a 90-point season. He had a 77-point season. He had several 20-goal seasons. Like, this wasn't a guy who just fought. He was somebody who put up good numbers and even put up 15 points in 15 games in one playoff year. So somebody who the Bruins relied upon for more than fighting, but he fought. Like, it's rare to see a guy who fights a lot in the top 6 of a team's roster, and he certainly was. And apparently was Milan Lucic's favorite player. Oh, no, I'm sorry. O'Reilly has stated his favorite player is Milan Lucic. So there you go. If that gives you any idea. I mean, Milan Lucic is about as close to like a modern day enforcer as you could get, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I don't know that the word enforcer really is. It just doesn't work with anything that happens anymore, but as close as it can get. All right, number 6.
Yeah, my number 6 is Chris Nealon, nickname Knuckles.
Chris Nealon.
Nealon.
Have you
Nyland?
seen?
Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
What is there's a Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. I think it was called the Last Gladiators.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That was
I know what you're talking about.
A documentary, and it basically was about Chris Nyland, but it followed a bunch of fighters from the 80s and 90s, and he was fantastic in it. He's really, just an interesting guy. He's actually my number 5, so we're pretty close on that. But why did you have him at number 6?
Yeah, I mean, really, the guys above him, right? I mean, you could. There's a couple of guys where you.
He's only third all time in fights. Only 316.
Only 306. But I mean, look, he's a guy who averaged more penalty minutes per game than any other player in league history. Holds the record for most penalty minutes in a single game with 42. I don't even know how you get that many game misconducts, but like you're fighting a guy every shift because those guys only get out there like 6 or 7 shifts a game. And, he's one of only 9 guys to get over 3,000 penalty minutes, considering the thing that was even more fascinating. I read that he actually missed his last 5 years, missed over 200 games. So you have to think if he had played even close to those 200, he probably easily would have eclipsed 4,000 and, probably been, the only person to do that. But still just wild. And
he also had a 20-goal season. In 84-85, he actually in 83-84 he had 16 goals and 26 points. Then next year he had 21 goals and 37 points, and then he had 19 goals and 34 points. And I remember in the documentary The Last Gladiators, he talked about that, and he said, hey, I fought my way to the NHL. That's how we got to the NHL. That's how he got noticed. He's like, but I knew I had talent. I knew that I could play, and I believe that it was. Oh gosh, who am I thinking of? It was Bob Gainey. Was it Bob Gainey who played for the Canadiens at that time? I think it was Bob. It was somebody on the Canadiens that was a good defensive centerman. Am I thinking of Bob Gainey?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And if I'm wrong, sorry, but someone prominent on the Montreal Canadiens took him under his wing and was putting him through drills and saying like, here, do these like over and over and over again. And he said like, hey, I've been, I worked with him. Oh, it was Guy Carbonneau, I think, actually, who he worked with. Anyways, so he was working with these guys to try and score goals, and he was doing it. I mean, 16, 21, 19, that's not bad for a guy who's playing fourth line, third line minutes. And then I think in 86, after they win the cup in 86, something happened. He got hurt, and then I think he kept having injury problems. And then I think they were just like, dude, you just got to fight. Like, we don't need you to score goals. And that was kind of the end of it. But I just thought it was really interesting. He's like the one guy who was like, didn't want to accept the fact that he was only a fighter, and he wanted to become something more and be good. And he did it. I mean, 21 goals. I don't care if it's the 80s. I mean, not everybody was scoring 21 goals, especially with 358 penalty minutes in the same year. I wonder, is that the most? How many? Dave Schultz has the most penalty minutes in a season. I wonder who has the most penalty minutes for goals. Yeah, see, Dave Schultz only had. Dave Schultz had a year where he had 348 penalty minutes, and he scored 20 goals. And Nyland was at 338 or 358 with 21. So those I wonder how many 20 goal seasons with 300 points there are, but those two seasons are pretty comparable. By the way, Nyland had one playoff where he had 141 penalty minutes.
Yes, averaging over 7 minutes a game. Like, what are you doing?
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I love it. Yeah, Chris. Like I said, Chris Nyland was my number 5. Definitely. I mean, he is one of the best nicknames too. Knuckles, awesome. My number 6, Donald Brashear. So
okay.
Since we've already covered old Donald, which is he's running. What does he do? He's running the NHL player safety or something, isn't he?
Oh no, you're thinking about George Peros.
Oh, Peros. Yeah. Sorry. What's Brashear doing? I feel like Brashear did something along those lines. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong. Apparently, it was reported that Brashear was working at a Tim Hortons restaurant in Quebec City in 2019. So
Tim Hortons.
He may not be doing the best.
Oh, no.
We wish him the best.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, a lot of these guys end up having to supplement their mental health issues with other things that are unfortunate as well. Don't tend to lead down good roads. But can you imagine pulling up to a Tim Hortons drive-thru and it's freaking Donald Brashear?
Yep.
That would be great. Okay, let's go into we're in the top 5, right? No, you haven't given your 5.
Top 5. Let's go. I haven't given number 5.
Who is your 5?
Marty McSorley.
Oh, wow. McSorley's way up there on you.
Yeah.
Love it.
So he gets a little bit more of a bump, right? So traditionally speaking, he doesn't have, as many fights as some of these other guys on my list, right? But he falls at number 7 all time. Yeah, great hair. Falls,
and he was,
number 7 all time.
He's in Bad Boys.
That's true. I forgot about that.
And Con Air.
Yeah, good call. I forgot about that. But 278 fights all time, clocks in at number 7. And for me, the reason he gets in top 5 is because he was brought in to protect the great one, Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
And of course, when Gretzky went over to LA, he had to have other guys come with him, and he actually requested, I believe, Marty McSorley be one of those guys.
Yep.
And there's a good reason for it, right? He was skilled enough. He still put up some decent numbers. There were some seasons.
Yeah, he had 15 goals a couple times.
Yeah, in LA, he put up 41 points one season, and 92, 93.
He had 10
39.
points in the playoffs in their Stanley Cup run.
Right.
That's nothing to balk at.
No, and he wasn't. He wasn't a wash like fourth line guy getting 7 minutes a night, but so he had some skill, but he was there to protect Gretzky, and he did a great job of it. And obviously at the end of his career, he had the old stick incident we don't like to talk about, but or we already did talk about. So
yeah, he also did. He played 14 games professionally after that for the Grand Rapids Griffins when they were in the International Hockey League.
Ah, the good old IHL.
Yes, the IHL. What was wasn't there a team that played at the Palace? Was that
the Detroit Vipers?
The Vipers, yes.
Yes.
Dude, the best jerseys. That's where Tim Thomas played. It's the Vipers.
Did he really?
Yeah, I think that was one of the teams that he played for when he was like 28. He was still like late 20s, was still playing in the IHL something. So, yep, played for the Vipers. Okay,
great.
Let's see. Let's go your number 4.
Well, did you give your number 5?
I gave my number 5. It's Chris Nyland.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good. Number 4 for me is the guy who leads the league all time in penalty minutes. That's Tiger Williams.
Yep. Me too. Number 4.
Yeah,
yep.
You have to put him on here if you're leading the league in penalty minutes. And
he second all time in fights at 325.
Yep.
Led
the
NHL
in
amount.
penalty minutes 3 different times too. So
only 3.
Only 3. I was kind of surprised by that, but that's still impressive though. If you really, all things considered, I suppose. But yeah, and he still produced. He produced more than. He got 513 points in almost 962 games, I think it was. So he still could put up some good numbers.
Yeah. It's interesting. You consider somebody like Tiger Williams. He's leading the league a few times in penalty minutes, and then you look at who leads the NHL in penalty minutes nowadays. Like in last year was Pat Maroon at 150 penalty minutes.
Mm-hmm.
In 2019-20, it was Evander Kane. Actually, and you know what? That was even a shortened season at 122. Evander Kane has led the league in penalty minutes twice.
Twice,
which is funny. It's funny. Not even what? Not even. How many guys have actually done it twice? Like Chris Nyland's done it twice. And so has Evander Kane. So just Zenon Konopka has led the league a few times in penalty minutes. There's
a name.
Yeah, there's the name.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what I loved about Tiger Williams was when I remember watching some old tape of him playing for Vancouver and the celly he had when he'd score a goal where basically he'd ride the stick between his legs and almost squat down to the ice. Oh, it was just that to me was just an all-time Selly right there. I mean, I don't know if he originated that one or not, but he was one of the first guys I ever watched do it, and it was just a glorious celebration.
Love it. Yes, and he does have some other records. So he has most playoff penalty minutes in Maple Leafs history. He's got the most penalty minutes in one season by a left wing too, at 351. He has the Vancouver record for most penalty minutes in the playoffs as well. And then he has the Vancouver record for most penalty minutes in one playoff year at 116, and 51 for one series against Chicago in 82. So that's some pretty good records there.
Not bad.
Okay, my number 4, I said it was Dave Jagger Williams. I'll go my number 3. This is the guy who holds the record for the most penalty minutes in one season, and that's Dave Schultz. I believe it was 492 or something like that he had for penalty minutes. So, yeah, Dave Schultz, my goodness, so important to what the Philadelphia Flyers did in the 70s. I mean, just willing to toss it with anybody, but so crucial to what they did too, as becoming this team that was so intimidating. He's only 40th all time in fights, only 197 fights. The guy only fought 200 times, but fighting maybe hadn't become quite as, I'll say, like methodical as it became in the mid 80s into the 90s, where it was like, hey, every game you're just going to fight. Sorry, it was 472 penalty minutes. There was, I think, a little bit more of a rhyme and reason to fighting. Like, you fought for a reason, as opposed to in the, once fighting became really, really popular, it was like, hey, you're here on the team to be entertaining and fight and rile up the boys. In the 70s, it was more like, hey, you're going to fight somebody to scare the absolute living hell out of them. So he did have 139 penalty minutes. Actually, I don't think the Flyers won the Cup in 74. Did they win in 74? Yeah, they did. Yep. So the first year they won the Cup, he had 139 penalty minutes in 17 games. So, yeah, Dave Schultz, definitely a scary, scary man. And his nickname, as you said earlier, the Hammer.
The Hammer.
Yeah. Why'd you have him at number 4?
I didn't have him. I had Tiger Williams at 4.
Oh.
Dave Schultz is in my top 3, but I haven't said where yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 for me is Ty Domi.
It's disappointing. It's a little low for me.
Yeah, he comes in at number 3. Obviously, the all-time leader in fights, right? 339, I think was. Yeah, 339 fights. 339.
Good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, really, I'll be honest. The guys in my top 3, you could juggle their numbers between 1, 2, and 3 at any point. I mean, these guys were all terrifying and menaces on the ice. The one thing I will say about Domi over a guy like Dave Schultz, for example, if you want to give him this nod, is, Ty Domi was much more of a scorer, right? He had a little bit more longevity to his career, and he was obviously a little bit more of a threat while on the ice. Granted, only 245 points, but a little bit more than Schultz.
And it was a little bit later in his career. Like, earlier in his career, he was just a fighter. I mean, when he played, he was in the played for the Rangers. He was actually drafted by Toronto. But he only played 2 games there and went to the Rangers. He played for Winnipeg for a minute, which is like the oft forgotten. Oh yeah, Domi played. I feel like everybody remembers Domi played for the Rangers, and oh yeah, he played for Winnipeg, and then he was actually traded at the deadline to Toronto in '95. Toronto ended up missing the playoffs anyways, which is funny. But so he comes over to Toronto, and then he kind of finds a scoring touch. He has his career high as a 27-year-old with 28 points. And then it's not till he's 33 that he eclipses that career high with 15 goals, too, and 29 points. I remember that year. And he was only playing 10 minutes in that, like 10, 11 minutes a game. So he's not playing a whole lot and putting up decent points as a fourth-line guy. you're right. He definitely had that little bit of a scoring touch later in his career that maybe makes him. It made him this like he's important, a little more important to the team. Like he was at least a little bit of a threat. He definitely was not a big threat. Like nobody was that worried about him.
Right. And I will say, in retrospect to Dave Schultz, Ty Domi was a lot more of a fan favorite, in my opinion, in Toronto than Dave Schultz was in Philly. Yeah. So,
I mean, Ty Domi is maybe. I think you had like Matt Sundin and Ty Domi were the two most popular players in the Leafs.
Right.
At that time. I mean, you look at this. In 2001, he averaged 8 minutes and 23 seconds a game. He played all 82 games. He scored 12 even strength goals. He scored one on the power play. Who knows how the hell that happened?
The last 30 seconds.
Yeah. But 12 even strength goals is, I mean, you think about, that's also the year 2000. Like, scoring goals was hard. So to get 12 goals, even strength, I imagine that it was for the amount of time that he spent on the ice compared to his goals. I got to imagine that he was pretty high up there for like goals per 60. So
I like it.
Anyways, Ty Domi was probably like for me was like a top 3 favorite player growing up too. So he's my number 2. Well, he didn't do enough to eclipse number 1, which I think we probably have the same number 1. But
yeah, and Dave Schultz came in at number 2 for me. So
okay,
again, looking at Dave Schultz, right? So you look at it's funny. I read a little stat, and there's only been 4 times where an NHL player has eclipsed 400 penalty minutes in a single season, and he did it twice.
That's Dave Schultz did?
Dave Schultz did it, yeah. Did it twice.
Well, I only see 1. I see 74-75.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This little guy lied to me here? Now I got to look it up.
Maybe between the playoffs and the regular season.
Although, maybe that's what they're
between
counting.
The playoffs and regular season, he had over 400, over 500, almost 400. Yeah, I guess he did it. He would have done it twice, playoff and regular season, where he had over 400.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're counting.
And the year that he had 472, he had another 83 in the playoffs. So he only had 555 penalty minutes in 93 games.
Yeah, just unreal.
That's funny. I do like some of these older guys, like these fighters. At the end of their career, it seems like several of them just are like, I'll just go play in the American Hockey League for one more year. Like Dave Schultz, 79-80, just went to the American Hockey League. Still fought everybody. 248 penalty minutes in 56 games. That's funny. Just some guys can't hang it up.
Nope.
All right, so let's go to your number 1. I'm sure we share it. I'm sure that it's a fan favorite of yours.
Yeah, Bob Probert. There's no question about who's number
great.
1.
Yep.
Yeah. Surprisingly, only number 4 all time in fights, but man, he was the most feared of them all. I mean,
dude. I remember, like, we talk about Domi. I mean, Domi's my number 2. He's near number 3. I remember them fighting each other several times. Like, I don't know exactly how many times, but I know they definitely fought each other.
9 times with Ty Domi.
9 times, yeah. Are you looking at like hockey fights?
I'm looking at the hockeyfanatic.com.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it told you who won each fight or like
no, that'd be great.
What they determined. I thought at one point Hockey Fights was doing that, where they would tell you who, like, a guy's record in fights and whatnot. But anyways, I always feel like anyone fighting against Probert, they were just hanging on for their dear life.
Yeah.
He's just such a monster. And it's funny, I only really remember him playing for the Red Wings. I mean, I know he played almost half his career in Chicago. What he played? He played like 7 years in Chicago. But I barely remember him in Chicago. It was all about him being a Red Wing. But
it really was.
But he had 62 points.
Yeah, one season.
In 87-88.
Not bad.
My goodness, not bad at all. Along with 398 penalty minutes. He had literally every single career high in the same season. he had his most goals, his most assists, his most points, his best plus minus, his most penalty minutes, every single stat. He had 15 power play goals. Oh, they just stuck him in front of the net.
Well, yeah, that was during the dead wing era where there wasn't really much talent coming up, and they were starting.
Well, Yzerman was there.
They drafted Stevie Y.
Was he playing with Yzerman?
Probably.
He must have been.
Yeah, because that would have been a great thing. Like, hey, go out there and keep this guy safe, right? He's our future. So,
dude, his shooting percentage, 2 years, my goodness,
23%.
20, all time 16. I mean,
he's getting tap and rebounds from the front of the net.
Yeah, that's all he's shooting. Yes, that's true. That's all he's doing is shooting that. It is funny. He was in 91-92. He was 24th in Selke voting, and in 87-88 he was on the. It says All-Star 9. I don't know what that means exactly.
Oh, that meant at his position he was voted 9th best for the All-Star.
Oh, okay. Well,
voting.
There you go. I mean, that's not bad.
No, 9th best in the
league. I'll tell you who he was behind. Mark Messier. That's who was the next highest on the list for votes was Messier.
Oh boy. Okay.
You had other guys like Luc Robitaille won that award, which I mean he pretty much won it every year that he was a pretty good player. So. But yeah, he beat out Dale Hawerchuk, Dave Andrechuk, Brian Propp. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, not bad.
It's funny. I feel like at the time, you see Luc Robitaille, all-time left winger in scoring for the longest time. Did Ovechkin? Ovechkin doesn't have the points. Obviously, he has the goals, eclipsed him in the goals. But I feel like the left wing position was always kind of weak. And then, and now it's a much stronger position, but yeah, at the time it was a little weak. Okay, yeah. Anything else to say about Probert, or any memories of him just beating the tar out of anybody, or what?
I mean, he beat the tar out of everybody. You said it. Yep. That's my memory. So. Yep,
and still just a beloved. I mean, obviously he's passed on, but. Still beloved by Detroit fans and I think Chicago fans to an extent as well. Wasn't there during the lean. It was a more lean time for Chicago at the time, but he at least brought some excitement, I suppose, in his fighting there. But definitely had his best years with Detroit. Although sadly, did not win a cup with Detroit. Never won a Stanley Cup in his career. Out of all the players on my list, I guess. Dave Tiger Williams or Dave Schultz won a cup. Nyland won a cup. Terry O'Reilly, Gordie Howe. I don't think Dale Hunter won a cup.
Marty McSorley on my list.
Did McSorley win a cup?
I think, yeah, he was with Edmonton when they won a cup, I believe.
Oh, yeah, of course he was. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he won a bunch of cups.
Yeah. Well, he didn't come. He wasn't there from the beginning. They had another guy that... originally he was
yes, they had a guy who played with Gretzky. What was his name? Oh my goodness, this is gonna bother. Dave Semenko.
Yep, I think you're right.
Dave Semenko was the guy. I was trying to think who else won a cup that might. Joey Kocur did win a cup with the Rangers.
I think you're right.
Yes, he won a cup with the Rangers, and then he won 2 Stanley Cups with the Detroit Red Wings. And in his last year as a Detroit Red Wing, he averaged 6 minutes and 44 seconds a game.
6 minutes.
That's funny. How do you even justify having a guy on the roster?
Because he's there to just beat people up.
Funny enough, in the same thing for Bob Probert, his last year, he averaged 6:44 a game. That's funny. All right, well, there are our top 10 enforcers, fighters, tough guys of all time. Let us know what you thought. You can tweet us at OT Hockey Talk. Where did I just go? OT Hockey Talk on Twitter. Justin, what list are we doing next? What's our next top 10?
I've got a couple. How about maybe we can stay relevant towards the season, moves that have been made, and maybe we'll do something like here's one list that I've wanted to do and maybe was thinking about saving it for a little bit later on in the summer, but I think I think all the significant moves have been made at this point, so we might just see a couple little loose signings here or there.
Maybe
but I'd love
Carlson. Carlson would be.
Yeah, maybe Carlson. But I think right now I'd love to do top 10 most impactful offseason moves, whether or not it's a free agent signing, trade, what have you. But offseason.
I like it. All right, that will be our next show, top 10 most impactful moves made in the offseason. So stay tuned for that. And until then, keep enjoying this weather, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. Justin, you have a great night. And to our listeners, enjoy the rest of your day.